All right, so this is orchestration for multi-container Docker environments. I guess you could say it's kind of poor man's orchestration or simple orchestration, or what the hell are we really going to do with this orchestration stuff? So just something to get started with. And the goal of this is just to be able to quickly provision multi-container environments on a single machine. The specification is declaratively specified in YAML. It automatically builds the images if you want it to, so you can use a Docker file, or you can give it a URL to a Git repository, and it'll pull the code and look for a Docker file and build it. It synchronizes the startup order, so if you declare a bunch of services that need to be started in a particular order, it will start them in that order, and it will wait for the dependent services to actually respond to the port that they're supposed to be publishing on before starting the next step in the sequence. So it gives you the ability to start, stop, destroy sets of containers as a group, and you can also add containers to that group while that environment is running. And you can launch multiple copies of the same environment on the same machine if you needed to do that. So if you're doing development on an app, and for some reason you needed a couple different instances of it, you can easily launch multiple environments. This is what a configuration file looks like. It's just a YAML format. This defines two templates, a Node.js template and a MongoDB template. The Node.js template is it has a custom Docker file that it uses to build. And that extends existing base image that I had built and published to the Docker registry for Node.js. The config parameter basically mirrors the Docker API, or the Docker command line API. So anything that you can specify on the Docker command line, you can specify in the config portion of this. So whatever runtime parameters you would want to provide, you can do that. You can see here that the Node.js template has a require statement that depends on the MongoDB template and on port 27017 responding. So if we go and we do a little demo here, hopefully this works. And all we have to do, let's back up. So if we look, we have a maestro.yaml file, and all we have to do is run maestro builds the MongoDB, builds the Node.js, and you can see in here that when it went to start the Node.js, it said that it's waiting for MongoDB, and so we'll sit there and wait for a period of time. I think it waits 30 seconds for that service to respond. If the service doesn't respond, then it'll just shut the whole environment down and throw it away. Once MongoDB responds, then Node.js will continue launching, and if we do maestro ps, we can now see that we have two nodes running, and one of them is publishing port 49156. So if we go to hopefully we'll see a very boring app, but it has the IP address for the Mongo server, so it could connect to that. And we can stop the entire environment. And we can restart the environment. And it does the same thing again, synchronizes the start process. And we can also stop individual nodes by name. So I did Docker PS, but if we do Maestro PS, we get a node name. So we can say stop the Node.js thing. If we look at it again, you'll see that it's now marked as stopped, and then of course we can restart it the same way. You can also run additional, so we can do run Node.js, and this will run another copy of Node.js and put it into the environment, and it'll be published on a different port. If this had, say, a load balancer or something in there that was depending on the Node.js template, then the load balancer could reconfigure itself to provide that. This example doesn't have that. Another capability that it has is lots of talk about Saltstack. So if we look in here, there's a simple configuration. So this starts a salt master, and then it starts a salt minion. Actually, it'll start 10 salt minions. And so if we just do maestro build, and this is going to take a second to build the templates. The minions are waiting for the salt master to come up. Salt master came up, 10 minions started and registered themselves with the master. So again, we'll see now there are 10 minions, and if we do a Docker PS, we'll see that there's still my Node and MongoDB instances are running, but Maestro gives me a isolated view of the environment that I'm working with, and of course we can start and stop these as a unit. And if we SSH to oops. All right.
It's the syntax.
Yeah. I knew there was something wrong with that. This has a default password, which I typed wrong. So this is the salt master. If we do salt key, we'll see all the minions in the list, and we can do salt key -a to oops. Man, I wish I could type. We can accept all of these keys, and we now have a 10 node minion environment that we could configure however we wanted to by using the salt command. So if we do, say, salt star command.run, I don't know, df-h, oops, it's a command.run ps. It'll give us the process list from every one of those independent minions. And that's probably about it. And so we can just do, well, we can do maestro destroy, which will shut down and destroy the entire environment, including all of the images, the containers, everything will be wiped away. So if like one of the problems with Docker is that when you run a container and that container exits, the container's still around, which sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not, sometimes it just clutters up your system. This will clean up the whole environment. And I think that's probably about it. So, some questions?
In your first example with the Node and Mongo app, you'd explicitly specified a port from Mongo, but I didn't see that show up in the port mapping when you did Docker PS.
From Mongo? Mongo's not exposing the port because it's making the connection across the internal Docker network. Gotcha. I don't really know how that should work, whether it should, if Mongo exposes a port, then it's exposed on the host, right, which is, questionable whether that's the right thing to do or not. Again, back to the right. How are we supposed to really do this stuff? No. Yeah.
So I have two questions. First, I noticed in the destroy of this particular setup that the salt master was destroyed before all the menus shut down.
Yeah.
Are you going to implement reverse dependency?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Just hasn't been done.
Fair enough. Second question is, are the Maestro environments isolated to their own dedicated network bridge interface?
They are not currently. They probably should be. If this were to be really useful for production deployments, then they would almost certainly have to be. Right now, they're not.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I have two questions. First of all, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So my first question is you run multiple instances of a given setup? Because I noticed you said start, stop, that argument. Can I have like
Yeah, so in this particular scenario, it's looking for a maestro.yaml file in the current directory. If you copy the maestro.yaml file to another directory, you can start a parallel copy of it. I will add the ability to have global environments where you can just start a new a named environment under that. That's
you can play with the names to like scope things properly.
Yeah, yeah.
And my second question is, should Docker incorporate some of that, if anything? I don't know, but
it seems like
are there some hooks missing basically that made your life harder?
Obviously the what is it? What's the proper term? It's not orchestration or service discovery. The thing we were talking about earlier today. I mean, with the publishing of IPs and so on.
Oh, yeah.
That's very useful because this does it on its own by setting on environment variables.
Yeah. Sorry. I mean, other than that, since we discussed.
Yeah. Okay. Other than that, yeah, I don't know.
It's not a subtle hint that our conversation. But like things like grouping or naming. I mean, does it
certainly?
Did it seem to you? I have not tried to create a tool like this, so I don't have a feel for what belongs in Docker, if any.
It certainly feels to me like you should be able to name containers, just in general, or tag them, or in some way put some additional metadata on them, so that it makes it easier to find them. And the one of the weird things here is like you can see this Docker file. It has to do the add. And this is actually a different example than I ran, but this does the add from a GitHub tar.gz file, because the add command, if you do a GitHub checkout, and that Git repo has a maestro.yaml file in the root, just like you would put a Docker file. So just like you can do Docker build, and it'll automatically do that, you can do the same thing. But the add command doesn't work with in that scenario.
Because you passed the Docker file as standard input?
Yeah, well, because I'm going through the Python API. So this is built on top of the Python API. So the add command is run on the server, and so you lose the context from the client going through the Python API to the server. So that's a little bit of, this is the way that I worked around it, was to just do the add based off of a URL.
Well, that's probably the Python library that's
yeah.
Using Docker PY.
Yeah.
It's probably lagging a little bit behind.
Yeah.
So
well.
You do a full build. The 100% of the Docker CLI uses the API, the remote API.
Yeah, I mean, the previous version of Docker Pi, it had its own implementation of Builder, which that's been removed, and it now does the build on the server. So there's just some usability things with that as well. Like if you do a build that way, you don't get interactive output from it, but I think there may be something to.
So that's fixed in 0.5. I forgot to tell Jeff that also. So there was a hack in there that one of the limitations of Docker build around was that for a long time you didn't get like the live output the way you expect it, like in the PaaS environment. And so now that.
Yeah, so I guess I still don't know how to set that up, because this, like, if the build fails, it just gets one big block of JSON back, and it would be nice to be able to.
We should probably get.
And it comes at the end of the request, so even if it succeeds, you get one big block of JSON at the end of the request. So there's nothing you can display iteratively as the thing is building.
Would you mind opening an issue on Docker
Yeah.
library repo and make sure you don't miss it?
Okay.
We'll make sure it's up to date.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Any other questions?
Instead of the Docker commands here, can you do a file the same?
No. It has to be a URL, and that's again, can you do a Docker build? You can't do it. You have to do it. You can only send a Docker file via standard into Docker, right?
No, so that's actually kind of an expert mode thing. The expected way is that is to do Docker builds on the directory, and then it will expect a Docker file to be present in that directory.
Yeah.
Like that, then it can add anything relative to that directory.
But if you want to reference just a raw Docker file that lives somewhere else, then you have to do it. You basically have to feed it as standard in to Docker build.
Yeah.
You can't just say Docker build and then the name of a file, and then that creates weirdness with add as well. Just the way add works feels weird to me.
So
I understand why it does that, but it feels weird. And so yeah, so the answer to your question is no. You can either do this a Docker file like this, or you can do the URL and pull it in from that way.
Because
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, because this may become very big. You put a big Docker file. The things could be very modular if you can give this the file and its reference outside, which contains the Docker specific thing. But as you have more and more, it's going to be more.
Yeah, this is I like this way where you create, try to extract as much as you can into a base build that is built out of this context. I think this is just customization of it for this specific use case.
That I can't read it really well, but the add that remote URL, is that the remote URL for the same source code that the maestro.yaml file is in?
Yeah, which is kind of sucky.
So if you change the implementation, you could probably, instead of piping the Docker file in, you could probably just copy it, like write it, generate it, like copy it to the local directory, and then Docker build that.
Yeah, except for I'm using the Python API. So that's making the assumption that I'm running on the same host as the Docker process. So yeah.
Is the problem that when you run Docker add, it doesn't use the current local directory if you're piping it in standard input?
Yeah, you can explain what it's really doing more. I mean, it has a context that it works in that's not the current directory.
So when you type Docker build, you have to pass it a directory, and then the command figures out how to build that directory into a container. To do that, it looks for a Docker file. The Docker file tells it what to do step by step. One of these possible steps can be add, which is basically take a piece of that source directory, the context of the build that you're building from, and put it here in the container. So that's the part for like things like upload the source, like tell the builder where to put the source in the container, etc. But it only works if there is a directory to build from.
Right. But from the Python API, there's no way to specify the current working directory.
So apparently not. I don't know. We'd have to, because there's a bunch of, I think there's like 8 client libraries in different languages now. So, and I mean Python we don't really use because it's the first one and it's built within that cloud. But probably there's just a little bit of catch up to do.
Yeah, as far as I know, nobody else has ever used this thing. So if somebody else decides to try it,
That might be about to change.
it's liable to blow up spectacularly, but it might work. You never know.
Very cool.
All right.
Thanks.